All right, everyone get ready because today we are going deep on a 1950s Tide print advertisement.
Ooh, fun.
You might be thinking laundry detergent. Really?
Yeah.
But just stick with me on this one because this is a media studies all-star. I mean, it's so iconic.
Right.
It's practically required viewing if you're a student tackling the WJEC Edukos exam,
Especially component one.
especially component one.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you are out there and you're one of those students, think of this deep dive as your secret weapon to
Yeah.
absolutely crush that exam.
Yeah.
But even if you're not in school, if you're just a casual listener, this ad is seriously a fascinating window into how advertising has shaped our culture and how they did it back then.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just about selling clean clothes, is it? It's like a snapshot of a whole moment in time.
Yeah,
All these insights into media language representation, audiences, the historical context, it's all there.
it's packed in.
Yeah.
So much to unpack.
We'll be uncovering how this ad uses all these established conventions, to sell a product, but at the same time, it's reflecting these changing roles of women in the 1950s.
Yeah, super interesting how they did that.
It is.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First impressions.
Yeah.
Anybody? This ad is text heavy.
Oh, yeah,
Like, whoa.
walls and walls of text.
This is not the minimalist aesthetic we are used to these days, right?
No, not at all.
And the layout, it's like a visual puzzle. Someone designed to just guide your eyes all over the page.
Yeah, you're totally right. That is a classic example of 1950s print advertising. I mean, remember, this was post-World War II.
Oh, yeah.
A total consumer boom. New products were hitting the market constantly left and right. And advertisers, they need to pack in so much information to convince people to buy.
Okay, so that explains why there's just so much text.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not just like a jumbled mess of words, though, right?
Yeah.
They're using different fonts, like really bold, playful fonts for the headlines and slogans, and then more traditional fonts for the details. It's like they're trying to walk this line between being informative but also approachable.
Yeah, it's that mix of fonts. It creates this visual hierarchy, which guides the reader through the message, so you get the key takeaways in those big, bold headlines.
Right.
But then you can delve deeper if you want to.
So smart.
Yeah.
It's almost like how we read the modern web now,
Yeah.
with the headings and subheadings to kind of guide you through.
It's very much like that.
Was that intentional, do you think, back then, or was it just like the style of the time?
Oh, they were doing that on purpose.
Really?
Advertisers have always known how design influences the way people read.
Oh, yeah.
They use all those elements you talked about, visual hierarchy, color imagery, to guide the viewer's eye and make that message really hit home.
And speaking of imagery, I can't help but notice these hearts that are just floating above the main image.
Oh, yeah.
They seem a little out of place for a laundry detergent ad.
Right.
What's the deal with that?
Well, those hearts, I think they're really key to understanding the deeper meaning of the ad.
Okay.
It's not just decoration. They're carefully chosen symbols,
Okay.
and they tap into a concept called semiotics,
Semiotic.
the study of signs and symbols and how they create meaning.
So those hearts aren't just hearts. They're representing a love connection.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even like a happy family.
Exactly. They're associating Tide with something so much bigger than just clean clothes.
Right.
It's about these emotional desires, love, belonging. Media theorists refer to this as the semantic code.
The semantic code.
Yeah, using symbols to trigger very specific emotions and associations in our minds.
So it's like when you see a perfume ad and they're showing all these images of flowers
Totally.
and you just get this like sense of romance or femininity.
Exactly.
They're not directly saying this perfume will make you irresistible.
Right.
But you just get that feeling from the imagery.
It's all about making you feel a certain way.
Yeah.
Creating that emotional connection with the product, and I think this Tide ad does it really well.
They do. And it's not just the hearts that are doing the heavy lifting here. They're using some really powerful words and phrases too, like Miracle World's cleanest wash, world's whitest wash.
Yeah.
It's like they're shouting at you from the page.
That's that strategic use of language.
Yeah.
Superlatives, hyperbole. They're creating that sense of excitement, urgency.
Right.
It's classic advertising, right? Make your product seem like the absolute best, the only solution to the consumer's problem. And in this case, the problem is dirty laundry.
It's funny how they frame dirty laundry as like this massive problem that only Tide can solve. Like, haven't people been washing clothes for centuries without Tide?
I know, right?
But I guess that's advertising for you.
That's the power of it.
Make you think you need something you never even knew you needed.
It's creating a need and then saying, hey, we've got the answer.
Yeah,
And it worked.
it did.
Tide became the leading laundry detergent.
So effective. It's incredible to me how much thought goes into crafting these messages
Right.
and how they can influence not just what we buy, but our whole perception of a product.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is. It really is amazing how much strategy goes into like just a laundry detergent ad.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. And speaking of strategy, let's talk about the woman featured in the ad.
Okay.
Her whole look just screams like 1950s housewife. You know,
Right.
that perfect hair, the dress. It's like she's a walking, talking stereotype.
You're picking up on something really important there, I think.
Okay.
That woman's appearance, it's super carefully constructed to appeal to like a very specific audience, the post-war housewife.
Right. Because this was during that time when women were encouraged to embrace their domestic roles,
Yeah.
you know, after the war effort.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like that whole Rosie the Riveter image was being replaced with this happy homemaker ideal.
Totally.
And this ad is playing right into that.
Oh, absolutely. Her hairstyle, the
Yeah.
makeup, that headband,
Yeah.
it all just creates this sense of like domestic perfection.
It's interesting that they included the headband, though.
Yeah.
Because that was originally a practical item worn by women, you know, working in factories during the war.
Right.
So it was like they're trying to bridge this gap between the wartime image of the strong, independent woman and then the post-war ideal of the domestic goddess.
Yep.
So she's still capable and efficient, but now her focus is all about the home.
Exactly. It's this subtle way of acknowledging that the social landscape was changing,
Right.
but it's still reinforcing those traditional gender roles. And it's
Right.
not even just her appearance that does this.
Okay.
Notice how she's not looking directly at us.
Now that you mention it, yeah, she's not.
Yeah.
She does seem a bit preoccupied with like those perfectly clean clothes.
She's lost in her world of laundry.
Yeah.
That indirect gaze, that's a really common technique in advertising. We call it indirect mode of address.
Okay, interesting.
It just subtly reinforces this idea that her main focus is her domestic duties.
So it's not just selling the laundry detergent, it's selling a whole lifestyle.
It-
This vision of like what it means to be a good wife, a good mother in the 1950s.
Yeah, they're selling an aspiration, an image, a way of life that women at the time would have wanted, you know?
Yeah.
And by associating Tide with that, they're saying like, hey, this is how you get there.
It's the key to domestic bliss.
Exactly.
It's pretty interesting that they chose to use a younger woman in the ad.
Uh-huh.
Like, were they intentionally going after a younger demographic?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like-
They were aiming for those newly married, lower middle class women who
Mhm.
were, you know, starting families, setting up their households.
Right.
Those were the women that were most likely to be buying all the new appliances and products for the home.
So it's not just age, it's a specific socioeconomic class, too.
Yeah, totally.
They're really targeting.
The ad is full of all these visual cues that
Yeah.
speak directly to that audience, like the clothesline full of laundry, you know, the suggestion of this like spacious, well-maintained home. These are all middle-class aspirations.
Yeah. It's like saying if you want to be part of this world, if you want this lifestyle, you need Tide.
Exactly. It's classic lifestyle advertising.
Yeah.
They're not just selling a product. It's a whole way of life.
So they're using this woman as a sort of role model,
Sure.
like the ideal 1950s housewife.
Yeah, this is what you should be.
Yeah.
And, you know, this all ties into some really interesting media theories.
Okay.
Like Stuart Hall, for example.
Okay.
He argued that representations in media, they can actually create like a shared conceptual roadmap for the audience.
So by showing us this image of the 1950s housewife,
Yeah.
they're not just reflecting what society is like, they're actively shaping those norms.
Exactly. They're giving the audience a framework for understanding what it means to be a woman, a wife, a mother in that time.
It's not just the visuals, though, right?
Right.
The language is doing a lot of work, too.
Oh, absolutely. The language is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's full of all these phrases like trust, truly safe, miracle, you know, all designed to appeal to like a consumer who's anxious to get, you know, the best for their family's clothes.
Like saying, don't worry, we'll take care of it all. Just use Tide and your family will be happy and healthy.
Exactly. They're playing on these anxieties that a lot of housewives would have felt.
Right.
The pressure to be perfect, the pressure to provide.
Yeah.
And Tide is the solution.
It's so clever, but it's also kind of manipulative when you really think about it.
It is.
Like they're preying on these insecurities just to sell something.
Right.
It's wild.
Yeah, you got to remember this ad was made in a very different time.
Yeah.
But it is a great example of how advertisers use language and imagery
Totally.
to tap into those really deep emotions and desires that we have.
And it makes you think, like, how much of our behavior is influenced by advertising?
Right.
Like, do we really need all these fancy cleaning products?
Yeah.
Or have we just been convinced that we do?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
That deserves a whole other deep
We
dive.
could do a whole series on that.
I know, right?
Yeah. But for now, let's get back to this ad and see what other clever techniques they're using.
Okay, sounds good.
What else jumps out at you?
Oh,
All right, so we've talked about the visuals, the language, the target audience.
uh-huh.
What else is going on in this ad that makes it so effective?
Well, one thing that stands out to me is that little seal of approval from Good Housekeeping magazine.
Oh, yeah.
That's not just there for decoration.
Right.
It's a very deliberate tactic.
Okay.
Leveraging an opinion leader.
So they're basically saying, hey, if a trusted source like Good Housekeeping says Tide is good, it's got to be good.
Exactly. Back then, Good Housekeeping was like a household name,
Oh, for sure.
a symbol of quality and reliability.
Yeah.
So by putting their seal of approval on the ad, Tide is like borrowing that credibility,
Smart.
instantly boosting consumer confidence.
It's kind of like influencers today,
Totally.
like when brands partner with people who have tons of followers,
Yeah.
hoping that their endorsement is going to make people want to buy stuff.
It's all about tapping into those existing trust networks
Yeah.
to make a product more appealing. And it's a strategy that's worked for decades.
Yeah, but let's not forget about the ad itself, right?
Right.
It's not just relying on Good Housekeeping to do the persuading.
Oh, no.
It's doing a lot of the heavy lifting itself,
Absolutely.
especially with all that persuasive language,
Oh, yeah. Remember all those phrases we talked about before?
like trust, truly safe.
Miracle nothing. Like,
Yeah.
they're all so carefully chosen
Yeah.
to make you feel reassured and confident. Like, don't worry, Tide is the answer to all your laundry problems. Just trust us.
They really want you to trust them.
Yeah, and that's super important in advertising, right?
Yeah.
Building that trust with the consumer.
Right, because there were other laundry detergents out there,
Oh, I'm sure there were tons of them.
all claiming to be the best.
Exactly.
So how did Tide stand out,
Well, one way they did that was by tapping into this post-war fascination
Okay.
with science and technology,
Uh-huh.
like all that talk about miracle suds.
Right. And how Tide is unlike soap.
Yeah, it's almost like they're saying this is cutting-edge stuff.
Right. It's the result of years of scientific research.
Yeah.
So they're connecting Tide with progress,
Yeah,
modernity.
right.
And that was a powerful message at a time when people were really excited about new technologies.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So they're not just selling clean clothes, they're selling a whole vision of the future
Right.
where laundry is easy and effortless.
And scientifically advanced.
Yeah, thanks to Tide.
Exactly.
I love how much is going on beneath the surface of what seems like a really simple ad.
It's amazing, isn't it? And that's what I love about media analysis.
Yeah.
It lets us peel back those layers and see how these messages are made and how they can really affect us.
Well, I think this deep dive has been amazing. I
Yeah.
think we've got a good foundation now for understanding how to analyze these messages.
Totally. We've seen how all the pieces fit together, the language, the representation, who they're targeting, the historical context. It all matters.
Yeah. And once you understand those things,
Yeah.
you can start to be a more critical consumer of media.
Right.
You start to recognize how these messages are put together and the impact they can have on us, how we think, how we feel, how we act.
It's like a superpower.
It really is.
So next time you see an ad, whether it's for laundry detergent or the latest phone, take a second to think about what's really going on.
Yeah.
Who made this? What are they trying to do? And how are they trying to influence me?
Those are great questions to ask.
Yeah, because when we engage with media critically,
Yeah.
we can make better choices
Yeah.
about, what messages we let shape our world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into this 1950s Tide ad.
Yeah.
It's been really eye-opening, and I hope everyone listening has learned something new.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Yeah, this has been fun.
And remember, the world of media, it's huge and complicated.
Oh.
There's always something new to find something new to learn. So keep thinking critically and never stop questioning the messages you see.
So well said. Until next time, happy analyzing, everyone.